Hello, listeners, and welcome to episode 6 of Stuttering Through Life, the podcast that's all about stuttering. I'm your host, Kyung Lee, and today we have Devin Sloos on the podcast. Hi, Devin.
Hey, Young, thanks for having me.
Of course, it's great to have you. Um, Devin is the director of music at the Royal Military College in Kingston, Ontario. He's been part of the military for 16 years and he stutters.
Yeah.
So it's so cool that you're in a military band, and I've always thought that the military and music was a really cool combination that works really well. So how do you think having a stutter has affected your experience in this field?
See, in this field, it depends, I guess, because I've had my stammer for so long before this. Stammer comes in usually when you have any sort of public speaking under a stressful situation, and certainly the military is no stranger to stressful situations.
Yeah, for sure.
I guess, but in the way, stammer's kind of helped me in my career in that it's helpful as an officer to have people. You manage a team, and you have to know the strengths of your team, and my strength is not always saying things like immediately or being able to say things right on command, and it's helpful knowing people in your team who are closers or who are good speakers and putting them in a position to do that. As far as music goes, it's nice because it kind of transcends a lot of that. It's also such a collaborative thing
Right,
that
yeah.
it's nice being a part of the team. And if stammer were to affect me in the middle of a piece, there's other people who will carry it on from there.
Yeah, for sure. It's nice to have that support system where you work and makes,
Mm-hmm.
yeah,
Absolutely.
it's true. Oh, and I also forgot to mention for our listeners, I've always known stuttering as stuttering, but it's also known as stammering in different parts of the world and even in just like different states or different countries. So we'll be using it interchangeably, just so
Mm-hmm.
everyone knows. So I remember when we were talking earlier, you told me a really interesting analogy to how you explained what stuttering feels like. So if you were to explain what stuttering felt like to someone who didn't stutter, how would you explain this?
Yeah, all through growing up, I found it kind of I would imagine that it'd be a really difficult thing for other people to understand.
Yeah, for
People
sure.
who never have any sort of speech impediment to, and I feel like in the same sense has been elusive for me too, to kind of know how people can just say whatever they want on
Yeah,
command,
me
because I've
too.
never I've never really had that experience. So
Yeah.
then I was doing a lot of weight training in high school, and there's a point like when I would bench press where there's a weight that you're lifting up that is, you're part way up, and it's not so heavy that you're going to drop it on yourself, but it's
Hmm.
also heavy enough that you can't push it up, and you're kind of stuck in this limbo, and you kind of like move your body and your shoulders in such a way to kind of try to get an invisible grip on this weight. And I feel
Right.
like it's kind of like that, where it's not that you can't conceive of saying the word, and it's also not that um, you're not going to be able to say it, but there's like some kind of invisible leverage that you're working with to try to get the word out that's hard to explain otherwise.
Yeah, yeah, for sure. I really like that what you talked about, and so I thought it'd be really useful for other people to hear.
Mm.
And what you said about when you're stuttering on a word, it's not that we can't conceive of the word. I think that's really true because when someone is stuttering, we always know what we want to say, like the words we want to say, we have it in our minds.
Hmm.
It's just this like invisible thing that blocks us sometimes or just takes us longer to say it.
Yeah, and I heard an interesting quote recently that I guess I don't understand it as the quote, but kind of my perception of it. The quote was, Sometimes people hear we have a physical disability and we're treated as though we have a cognitive disability.
Right,
And
yeah.
I feel like that's kind of something that um, I've always kind of imposed on others in a sense as well,
Mhm.
where I go, oh, I know what I'm going to say, but they don't know that I know what I'm going to say.
Yeah.
And sometimes they try to finish my sentences, and which is not a problem for me if they say it right, but
Mhm.
if they actually I guess it right, but it's yeah, I guess I always struggled with it of thinking that other people would perceive it as being a cognitive disability, whereas just
Right.
a physical disability or limitation or whatever you want to call it.
Yeah, and I think it's understandable for someone who doesn't know what stuttering is to assume that if someone is stuttering that they don't know what they're gonna say or they need help finishing their sentence.
Hmm.
Um but people who stutter are just like any other people. They just uh take a little longer saying what they have to say, right?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, my wife, she's actually loved my stammer since the first time I met her, which is great for me.
Yeah, that's really
Having a
sweet.
stammer is pretty great if my wife likes it. We have this joke between us. You know the movie Frozen. There's a
Yeah.
song between Anna and the guy she has a crush on, whatever.
Yeah,
And
Hans.
Hans, yeah, and they're singing this song. We finish each other's, and then the other person finished it with sandwiches, which
Mhm.
is, I think it's the most hilarious part of the movie.
Yeah.
And so we say that all the time, where I'm like trying to say a story and I stammer on a word, and Erica tries to like answer or finish my sentence, and it's almost always wrong somehow, which is funny. So I was like, yeah, I was planning to say a different sandwich, but I guess your sandwich works too.
Yeah. Yeah, I get that. It turns out to be like a guessing game sometimes when people try to finish your sentences.
Absolutely. And if people are accurate at it, like I really don't mind, because then, we can speed the conversation along, because
That's true.
I don't necessarily like the attention always of like, bringing a conversation to a standstill. Again, I
Yeah.
know it's not a limitation on us, but it's kind of nice if the conversation can continue to flow forward.
Yeah, me too. I totally get what you mean because I think when I stutter, the thing I hate most is because usually when I stutter, it's a block where there's like a space of silence. And
Hmm.
what I dislike most about my stutter is the awkwardness it created. So sometimes it would be a relief
Hmm.
if the person who I was talking to would just say it for me and we can get the conversation flowing.
Yeah.
Yeah, but I think in the long run, it kind of made me like scared of my stutter a little bit and I would try to
Hmm.
avoid it. So I've been trying, like personally, just for me, it's different for everyone, obviously, but
Right.
personally, I've been trying to just just take my own time and stutter through what I was gonna say.
Yeah.
Mhm.
I think that's a really important thing for having any sort of speech impediment, is allowing yourself to take time and space,
Right.
and
Yeah.
allowing yourself to also not rush it, because sometimes
Mhm.
by rushing it, the stammering or stuttering gets worse, because
Yeah.
you're trying to let people know that you're trying to say something, and
Mhm.
trying to force it. It can sometimes be more stressful and make it worse. I had an experience
Yeah.
with that in undergrad. I was in an English class in my fourth year of undergrad,
Mhm.
and it actually came to my advantage after a while, because everyone else, the teacher would call, the professor would call on them and they would talk immediately. And then professor call on someone else and they would talk immediately. And no one really
Mhm.
cared what anyone else had to say,
Yeah,
because it just
that's
kind of
true.
flowed that way.
Mhm.
Whereas every time she'd call on me, it would take me a couple seconds, and in
Right.
that couple seconds the whole room went quiet, and then everyone actually would like turn around, and then by the time I actually said something, I had everyone's complete attention and the
Mhm.
room was silent so everyone could hear me. And
Yeah.
it's like one of the like big successes I had
Yeah.
as a person who's struggled with a speech impediment my whole life.
Yeah, that way everyone hears what you have to say and they tune in automatically. Yeah, it's really
Yeah,
true.
exactly. Yeah, I also had a with time and space. I also had a funny experience when I was doing my master's at the Eastman School of Music.
Oh yeah.
I was the teaching assistant for the tuba euphonium ensemble, and it was one time where we were playing at NERTEC, which is the Northeast Regional Tuba Euphonium Conference in Ithaca, New York,
Mm-hmm.
and we were the opening show on opening night, and
Oh,
the
that's so much
concert hall
pressure.
was, yeah. I love public speaking, which is a weird and but like fortunate thing for someone with a stammer.
Yeah, that's great.
But in this case, it was so funny because opening night on opening act, and the auditorium was full of like the top professionals in the low brass world, and you
Mm-hmm.
knew they were all out there. And I went in front of the group because I was going to announce who we were and the piece and stuff like this. And I go pull up the microphone to my mouth. I can hear that the microphone is really live, like really hot, that it's like
Mm-hmm.
going to be pretty loud.
Yeah.
And I go to talk, and the only thing that comes out is a er, and then I just like take a second, and then I smile because I think that's hilarious. And then the whole auditorium just erupted in laughter,
Oh my
which
gosh.
was hilarious. It was like the best icebreaker ever. And
Yeah,
as
for
long as I
sure.
wasn't self-conscious about it, then
Mhm.
like I felt way better. I articulated myself well
Yeah.
after, introduced ourselves, and like we had a great time on stage.
Yeah, it's really funny. Yeah, just being comfortable in that situation, I think can be hard for some people, but if you're able to be comfortable, it makes everyone comfortable, which is the best thing. Yeah.
That's it, right?
Yeah, that's all there is. Oh, that's really funny.
And I think as well, you mentioned, if it makes everyone comfortable,
Mhm.
that's a key. And that's, certainly helped. When I met my wife, we were in like a Bible study, and so
Mhm.
have we were introducing ourselves, and like freaking stammer, and then it just, everyone laughed, broke the tension. But
Yeah.
it also, as far as advantages go,
Mhm.
another advantage of having a stammer, I think, is really not fearing disabilities or limitations in
Yeah,
other people,
for
because
sure.
there's nothing that feels worse than being pitied
Mhm.
for having a speech limitation or speech disability or whatever. Because it's, again, I don't feel any less than anyone. I don't
Yeah.
feel like I'm not intelligent or something like this. So I always
Mhm.
hated when people would pity me for my stammer.
Yeah, for sure.
um, and I feel like that helped me deal with, or not deal with, but interact and engage and support people with other disabilities, regardless of what it is,
Mhm.
because being in that position where I just wanted to be treated like Devin, not the stammerer friend. It's like,
Yeah, for sure.
then it's the same thing with anyone else. It's like, oh, okay, you have a limitation, or maybe, I had a student that had like chronic and like debilitating depression.
Mm.
And so, but I just, taught him as who he was. And
Yeah.
then we just knew that sometimes he would be depressed, and
Yeah.
then other times he wouldn't be depressed. But in the meantime,
Mhm.
we were learning the euphonium,
Yeah.
and then he could thrive so much better and improve so much more quickly because he wasn't being treated for his limitation or disability.
Right, yeah, I think that's a really good point. I loved everything you said just now. I think I think definitely that pity that some people who stutter get, it's definitely not a great feeling. And I think just everyone who doesn't really know about stuttering, they just kind of have to learn that because we stutter, it doesn't mean like we're any lesser or like less smart or intelligent or anything like that. We just happen to talk a little differently, and I think once they think about it that way, it's actually pretty simple and it's not really a big deal.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, absolutely.
Mhm. And what you said about understanding and accepting people with other di- disabilities or limitations has a
Mm-hmm.
big impact on our like empathy level, I think, because we're able to
Absolutely.
relate to like not being in complete control of something,
Yep.
and it just affects our lives. Yeah.
Absolutely.
Mm-hmm.
And I feel as well, like as an officer, it has made a difference as well too.
Mm-hmm.
Because part of it, I feel like part of being a good leader is
Yeah.
also knowing the capacity of your people
Right.
and then putting them in situations like setting them up for success,
Mm-hmm.
but also it's knowing their limitations that will impede it and knowing what their limitations are that need to be overcome.
Mm-hmm.
So I have that at, right now it's COVID-19, right?
Yes.
And I work at the Royal Military College, and sometimes it's very difficult for the students at the college. Right now they're dispersed all over the country,
Mm-hmm.
and it's very strange because at the Royal Military College is such a tight community,
Mm-hmm.
and that community it's an integral part of the RMC experience,
Mm-hmm.
and yet they're apart. And
Yeah.
so online classes are difficult. They don't have regular interactions with their college friends. Like everything's different, and so running a virtual music program,
Mm-hmm.
it's also sometimes difficult because I know that they're having a rough go. Um, and then you want to make sure you have enough pressure so that when they know that they matter, that they're a part of something that's vibrant, that they're a part
Yeah.
of something engaging, while also trying to manage their energy so that they don't feel so loyal to you that they burn themselves out when really they need a break.
Yeah.
Or
Mm-hmm.
and there are some people who the expectations on them are lower, so their efficiency is lower, and
Mm-hmm.
so they think, oh, I should take a break, but sometimes they just need a kick in the butt where they just like, no, you need to be more efficient with your time.
Right.
And I feel like my experience with not treating people by their limitations or engaging with people by their limitations has made it more possible with empathy to know, like, okay, in this situation, this person needs tough love.
Mm-hmm.
And then so like they're gonna continue to have this deadline, and they will make their deadline, and then they feel better for it afterwards. And then there are people who are limited because maybe they're feeling depressed, maybe they're feeling anxious, maybe they're falling behind in academics, which happens to everyone. We ebb and flow.
Yeah, for sure.
And but so there's times when they need the time and space and
Mm-hmm.
go, you know what, in your situation, I think you should take the time. And then when you're through this season, then we'll welcome you back with open arms.
Yeah. 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 As a leader, I think that's like the most important thing you can do for the people that you lead. And yeah, it's really cool how you delegate each thing like that.
Mm-hmm. That's really been critical for me, and that's been um, re- really helpful once I've been able to
Mhm.
kind of recognize my teammates or my team's strengths and be able to capitalize on that. As silly as one summer, I was the assistant director of music for Ceremonial Guard,
Mhm.
and it's kind of a complex role on the hill
Yeah.
because you have to yeah, you're conducting, you're stopping and starting, but you're also having to constantly be aware of the other elements that are going on in the parade. And so
Oh, right.
sometimes it's like, because you have to end the music in a reasonable place
Mhm.
for a march, and you have to cue the bass drum, give enough cue to the bass drum
Mhm.
enough notice.
Yeah.
And so it sounds simple, but sometimes it can be very difficult to end the music at exactly the right place to make sure everyone stops at the same time.
Yeah, it sounds hard.
um, but there's no speaking role,
Right.
which is kind of handy, especially for someone with a stammer. But there is one occasion during the ceremonial guard where the bando has to say something, and that's where the parade commander says something, and I'm supposed to say, "Band ready,"
Mhm.
and I'm like, everyone knows that that's what comes next.
Yeah, yeah.
So my one strategy was that because no one really hears any consonants anyway, so I
Mhm.
would say like, "And ready." I just try to accentuate the beginning of it, but then I also learned eventually that the drummers loved shouting it on my behalf.
Yeah, yeah.
So I'm like, oh man, they're gonna stammer on it 0% of the time, and I have a chance of stammering on it every single time.
Yeah.
So so then it's like, oh man, drummers love it, I will totally do that. And I just, gave them a little cue every time that it was coming. And then they poured their hearts into it. It almost became a competition of who could say band ready best. And I was really happy to tip my hat to them.
Yeah, that's so funny. Yeah, in those types of like time crunch situations, that's like the best thing you can do. That's really
Yeah,
cool.
yeah, absolutely.
Mm. Oh, and when we were talking earlier, you told me a lot of these little cool philosophies or mantras that you have for yourself,
Hmm.
and I thought they were really beneficial and really interesting to learn about. Can you tell us more about this and how they help you?
Yeah, my the one I use the most often, and I'm working from home, and my meetings are from home, and
Right.
my wife works from home too, and so she hears this on a daily basis. The one I say the
Mhm.
most common is the best idea wins.
Yeah.
You know, and I also tell my team often, like, I only come up with a first draft. So like I have an idea for how I want things done, and then I put it in a cohesive plan,
Mhm.
and then I send it out to my advisors, and it should be at least that good.
Mhm.
And but otherwise, like if they can improve on it, if they have a better idea, then we always go with that. And I found that kind of standard has been really helpful as a leader to always make sure you have the best, because the standard isn't like how great a leader I am or
Yeah.
any statistics. The idea is that the best idea wins,
Right.
and that's been really helpful. There's also this book by Malcolm Gladwell that's
Mhm.
titled David and Goliath, and uh, I think it's a really helpful analogy as well. He talked
Yeah.
about the biblical story of David and Goliath, where there was this massive giant who who was taunting the Israelites, and
Mhm.
like he was like 8, 9, 10 feet tall or whatever,
Yeah.
just like this, just giant. No one's gonna beat him in a sword fight. And
Mhm.
then David comes, who's like a small shepherd boy who was like had a wicked slingshot. And the scenario, if you look at it from the outside in, is you have some 10-foot guy against some whatever 5-foot guy,
Mhm.
and 10 out of 10, 100% of the time, Goliath is going to win.
Yeah. In
But
a sword
he
fight.
does in a sword fight. Yeah,
Mhm.
exactly. But he doesn't win, and that's because David changed the conditions. And
Right.
so uh, Goliath, again, in a sword fight, would win 100% of the time. And then David brought in a slingshot, which is kind of like bringing a gun or a sniper to a sword fight.
Mhm.
And then so I feel like, especially for having a speech impediment, it's really helpful to kind of realize the conditions
Yeah.
and then change the conditions so that it works for you. And
Yeah.
in some ways, I feel like there are not many people who are required to be as adaptable as people
Mhm.
with a stammer,
Yeah, for
because
sure.
I don't know about you, but my whole life has been mid sentence trying to think of like different ways to say things, because you can
Mhm.
kind of sense like 8, 9, 10 words ahead when a word is you're gonna stammer on.
Yeah, yeah.
And so I feel like we're like kings and queens of synonyms for having other ways of saying things. Um, but then even in today, like how do you adapt the conditions? Because in a talking or a debate, I'm going to lose every time,
Right.
because they'll out talk me, they'll interrupt me, I sometimes can't really uh, plan my thought process terribly far in advance, because
Mhm.
I'm stuck on the one sentence, like screening it for stammer words kind of
Yeah,
thing.
yeah.
And so in that case, like, I'm not going to go into a debate and battle with words, because 100% of the time I'm going to lose.
Mhm.
So then the question is, how do you change the conditions so that you win every time?
Yeah, that's really true. I think if you happen to be in a debate, like you said, usually they go really fast, right? Just back and forth shooting. But
Mm-hmm.
I think if you were a person who stuttered and you wanted to change the conditions, maybe you could talk a lot slower and be a lot more enunciated so people listen to exactly what you're saying and not just the way you're saying it and things like that. Yeah, I
Mm-hmm.
think it's really true.
Yeah, and taking the time and space like we were talking before,
Yeah, exactly.
and not being afraid of silence. A lot of people are afraid of silence,
Yeah, for sure, a lot.
and and the silence is our reality.
Yeah. And I think also what you said uh about what you said about people who stutter being adaptable is really true um because having a stutter or a stammer affects our like social situations, right? Like we only
Mm-hmm.
talk when we talk to other people, but every situation is so different, and when we stutter it changes those situations. So
Mm-hmm.
um maybe not necessarily changing your words every time, but I think just going through and just living through those situations causes us to um I don't know, maybe just look at it from a different perspective than everybody else.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Absolutely. And I think what's interesting too about um, speech impediments
Mhm.
as well, and that's unique and adaptable, is that I feel like, I could be wrong. I haven't done an extensive survey, but I feel
Yeah.
like there's not two people that stammer on the same words.
Yeah.
Like,
It's different for everyone.
yeah, like I know from what I've heard, and certainly I've experienced this for myself, but the hardest word in the English language is your name, because
Mhm.
it's the one word in the English language that doesn't have a synonym. You can't
Right,
go like,
yeah.
my name is Christopher.
Yeah, it doesn't work that way.
You can't just pick your own name. And I I thought I was clever back in high school, but one time I was at a yard sale and they had like a stack of "Hello, my name is"
Oh
stickers.
yeah.
So I actually bought the stickers, and then anytime I was going to a place where knew that I would need to introduce myself,
Mhm.
then I just like wrote a "Hello, my name is" sticker and put it on my chest. No one ever questioned it, and I certainly didn't mind not having to say my name.
Yeah, it's funny.
Or another one for me is H's. I hate H's.
Oh yeah, they can be
Uh,
hard.
yeah, like on the phone,
Mhm.
not everyone thinks about this, but it's difficult to start a phone conversation without H. Like hello or hi is so common.
Oh yeah, and like hey too. Yeah.
Yeah, and so if it doesn't come out, if like when this was really bad for me,
Mhm.
and so this is back before there was a whole lot of caller ID too.
Right.
You pick up the phone, you call someone, they go hello, hello, and all you can give on the other end is you sound like some stalker on the other end. And so, and there's also a time limit that someone is willing to let there be silence on the other end of the line. So they'll
Right.
go, hello, hello. And then they either assume it's a telemarketer or
Mhm.
it's a creep or no one's there. And then they
Right.
hang up.
Yeah, it can be hard.
Yeah. So I used to throw, I do H and keep trying. And then, but I didn't want him to hang up. So I would just throw a S on it. And so I would just go, so that at least they would know I was there and wouldn't hang up on me.
Yeah, yeah. I think yeah, for phone calls, yeah, phone calls are definitely uh a hard experience for people who stutter for sure because it's just difficult to not be able to see the person you're talking to, and so
Mm-hmm.
you don't get those like social cues that you would normally get.
Yeah.
Yeah. Maybe maybe the next time I'm on the phone and I stutter, I'd just be like, "Oh, I stutter, just give me a second," and then maybe the other person will know that, "Oh, someone is there." Yeah.
Yeah. And then it breaks the tension, and then
Yeah, yeah.
you're good to carry on from there.
Yeah, exactly.
That's
Yeah.
great.
Okay, well, thank you so much for talking with me, Devin. It's been super interesting hearing all of your ideas and experiences, so thank you.
Yeah. Thanks for having me. This was great. Thank you.
Of course. And thank you, listeners, for continuing to support Stuttering Through Life, and stay tuned for the next episode. Bye, Devin.
Yeah. IQ Young.